all-new Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Well, we have a lot to talk about tonight, and these decisions, and whether they're the correct decisions, and whether or not there's enough evidence in this case to even link either one of these defendants to the death of baby Kalia. So let me bring in my think tank for tonight. We have criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Donald Schweitzer, who's joining us from San Diego. You see him just below me down there. Donald Schweitzer out there in San Diego, from your perspective, is this a missed opportunity for the defense, or do you think prosecutors, like you used to be, would have made this a really bad day for Mom on the witness stand?
Vinny, if I were a prosecutor in this case, I'd want her on that stand. I think the defense did the exact thing they should have done. This was a case of less is more. You cannot imagine going into a closing argument with a better situation for this defendant. She had absolutely nothing to gain by taking that stand and testifying. I mean, she could only hurt herself at that point. In this case, you and I were not in that private room trying to prepare her for testimony. We don't know how good or bad of a witness she would be, and I'm gonna trust the defense attorneys to know that she probably was better off by just relying on the state of the evidence.
And Donald, I'll ask you the same question I asked Shondell. Even if it's the absolute 100% truth, that she had nothing to do with it and does not know what happened to her child.
Vinny, truth has nothing to do with this. We got to get this. If I'm a defense attorney, I want to get her off. I want to send her home. I want her to be with her family. I mean, she can tell the truth afterwards to the press, to all her friends. She's got to get a not guilty verdict. By getting on that stand, she's more likely to get convicted.
Let me ask you, the fact that there isn't that physical evidence necessarily that we sometimes get in cases like this against a specific defendant, is that enough for the father to be set free on this as well?
Well, that all depends on who the prosecutors are. Do they do a good enough job? Are they going to do a good enough job in the closing arguments? And as you and I know, it's also about who those jurors are. What are they looking at when they see this case? There's a lot of cases where people are convicted without strong physical evidence based upon circumstantial evidence that we see in a case. In this particular case, you got some pretty good stuff. You got a guy that's running from a car after he hears that the body's been found, and he's got his statements that are also made to the police that are very difficult for him to explain. So to me, I think that, we don't know. We can never know what these jurors are going to think, and we don't know what kind of a presentation the prosecution has. But the lack of physical evidence is not something that should have deterred the prosecution from going forward with this case.
The fact that he was called by prosecutors after the defense tried to score some points on cross, saying this guy was never investigated. Does he end up remaining as a suspect in the eyes of the jury?
I don't think so. I think that was a good move on the part of the prosecution. One thing you don't want to happen in any case is they have some mystery man out there that they didn't get a chance to hear from or for the police to investigate. So in this case, I don't think he was a great witness. He probably doesn't add a real lot to the investigation, but at least the jurors got to see him and to see if they believe him and his credibility, and only jurors could do that. So I think that the prosecution made a good strategic move by putting him up there.
If you were representing this guy and he had all these tattoos, is there anything you would do? Would you address it? Would you have them covered up at the beginning of the trial? Or would you just, it is what it is?
The removal of tattoos would be really suspicious as well. That's where the prosecution would probably bring it in, and it may actually mean something to the jurors. So I definitely wouldn't try to cover it up. But right from the beginning, during the voir dire process, when you're asking jurors about their biases, I guess you have to ask them, are you going to hold my client's tattoos against him to find that he's guilty? Of course, you're going to ask those questions, but this is the most important part. The defense attorney's got to be extremely likable, right, from the very beginning, and he's got to put on that front, and possibly that will rub off on a defendant like this. It does in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that worked. Again, I keep coming back to the Casey Anthony case, and at the end of the day, the jury told us they liked Jose Baez more than they liked the prosecutor, so that may have a whole lot to do with what happened there. All right, folks, a lot happened today. The results are in for our 13th juror question. Should both parents have been charged with murder? And 58% of you are saying yes, but the more important number down there, 42% of you are saying no, and that could be good news for one of these defendants. All right, folks, so who had a better day today, prosecution or defense? Going to bring back in my think tank, and we begin out in San Diego with criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Donald Schweitzer. Was it the prosecution or Christopher McNabb's defense today? Who had a better day?
Clearly, it was the prosecutors. They put out a case. They laid out their evidence, and it really went unanswered. McNabb should have put on some type of a defense on his case instead of just resting on the people's evidence. I think that he made a mistake. There could have been an expert or somebody called to talk about the quality of the investigation or the lack thereof. So in this case, the people won against McNabb.
All right, let's give a big thank you to my think tank tonight. What a great job they did. Donald Schweitzer out there in San Diego, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. Thank you.
The all-new Court TV, your front row seat to justice.